Welcome to another episode of Russian Hate Speech, where we break down the Kremlin's latest lies against the West. At the beginning of September 2025, Russian propagandists spread narratives portraying Europe as weak, Ukraine as doomed, and Russia as ready to defend its interests by force, while promoting the idea of a supposed global conspiracy between Russia, the US, and China to divide Europe. The aim of these narratives was to intimidate Europe, delegitimize Ukraine, and justify Moscow's aggression. On August 31, 2025, during the program Moscow, Kremlin, Putin on Russia 1, Dmitry Peskov, deputy head of the presidential administration and press secretary of the Russian president, articulated this messaging by portraying Europe as obstructing peace while presenting Russia as reasonable and committed to diplomacy, targeting Kyiv in the process. Europeans are doing everything to support and probably encourage the Kyiv regime to continue its utterly absurd line of intransigence. This is a big mistake, a very big mistake. It will do no good to the Kyiv regime. On the contrary, it will make the situation even worse for Kyiv. Meanwhile, Russia maintains its position. We are ready to resolve the issue through political and diplomatic means. But so far, we see no reciprocity from Kyiv. We continue the special military operation. Peskov's statement presents the West as obstructing peace while portraying Russia as reasonable and diplomatically committed, and Kyiv as reckless and doomed. Later that same day, during Sunday evening with Vladimir Solovyov, the propagandists shifted to a more aggressive tone, directing hostile rhetoric at European partners of Ukraine. By portraying them as unable to defend themselves against Russian power, Solovyov sought to amplify fear and insecurity.
Europeans say, we are deploying troops. We will continue with the Americans. By the way, the Americans do not confirm this, that American PMC will enter, that American planes will protect us. From what? From Oreshnik in European cities? From tactical nuclear weapons? Do Americans' planes protect themselves from our S-400s, S-500s, and other systems? We have stated clearly, we have geopolitical interests. In December 2021, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin clearly outlined them. If you think you are taking actions that are diametrically opposed to our requirements, and we say, yes, indeed, Europeans, we will destroy you all.
This rhetoric openly threatens Europe and undermines its security systems, presenting Russian power as overwhelming and inevitable. It also aims to instill fear and discourage European countries from supporting Ukraine. On September 2, 2025, during Evening with Vladimir Solovyov, the narrative expanded to global dimensions. Igor Markov, former Ukrainian MP, propagated the idea that Russia, China, and the United States would divide Europe into spheres of influence, suggesting both inevitability and complicity of the West's own leaders. In recent years, with such venom, European leaders have, with Sullivan and Snot, talked about how they will deal us a strategic defeat, how they would divide this spy called Russia. God has his own plans and a good sense of humor. They are ready to divide this spy called Russia. You yourself, today, are the pie that will be divided. Russia, China, and the United States will divide Europe into spheres of influence, and they should, and there is no need to be shy here. I express my personal opinion. I am sure this will happen. Vladimir Solovyov reinforced this narrative, framing the US as opportunistic and ready to join Moscow in dominating Europe whenever advantageous.
And now Washington will join us in destroying Europe and will say, I told you to buy weapons from us. It has always been this way. When Washington sided with the loser, so as soon as it sees that we are winning, it happily joins us to divide Europe once again.
This segment underscores the Kremlin's narrative of a global conspiracy, presenting Russian actions as not only justified but inevitable. That same evening, Solovyov touched on the territorial integrity of EU countries, implying potential border changes and reorganization of European alliances.
I kept thinking, do we need Lviv or not? Because if we break a corridor to Hungary, we can help create a completely new European configuration. It will immediately be easier to assist Hungary, Serbia, Slovakia, settle matters with Bulgaria for all the meanness they do. Well, it could be a very interesting configuration. Who am I to judge? But who said Europe in its current borders is permanent?
By implying potential changes to European borders, this rhetoric challenges the EU's sovereignty and territorial integrity, reinforcing the Kremlin's portrayal of Europe as unstable. On September 4, 2025, Alexander Sosnovsky, editor-in-chief of the German online magazine World Economy, furthered the narrative that Europe has no real interest in ending the war diplomatically, suggesting that European countries profit from prolonging the conflict. It seems to me that these agreements are not needed by either the Americans or Europeans. Both sides are playing the long game because they are all interested in continuing the war. Whoever says that we want to shorten this time, we want to reduce this burden, Europeans are not interested at all. Solovyov supported this message, openly threatening Europe and framing Russian military actions as defensive and justified.
We will do what is necessary to ensure our security. Because all threats to our country have come from Europe for millennia. Therefore, Rutte, we don't care what you think. Once again, we will destroy anyone who poses a threat to us.
This statement is a clear example of classic Kremlin rhetoric used to legitimize aggression against the West and any state that resists Russia. Finally, Solovyov questioned Ukrainian statehood itself.
For us, something else is important. We don't care what they say. We don't care what happens on the territory of Ukraine. What matters to us is that the territory of Ukraine should not exist. For us, it is important that no threats come from there.
These statements illustrate the Kremlin's strategy, delegitimize Europe and Ukraine, depict Russia as rational and justify both threats and active aggression as protective measures against a supposedly hostile West. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for the next episode of Russian Hate Speech as we continue exposing the Kremlin's war on reality.